Legend says that some of these graves may have been disturbed by Union troops after they burned down the furnace.
A rediscovered abandoned cemetery leads to a search of what was once a thriving Civil War mining community.
This is one of the oldest parts of Birmingham, and hardly anybody knows about it.
Hey guys, this is William with Exploring History, and this channel is all about rediscovering forgotten history. If this is something that you're interested in, make sure you subscribe to this channel, like this video. But before we do this, let's get started. Right now, I am at the Oxmoor Cemetery, a rediscovered abandoned cemetery. What I know so far is it's on about 5.5 acres of land, and it was in use until about 1912. And it contains about 600 people, which include slaves, workers, and management of the nearby Oxmoor furnace. I'm always really intrigued by old, forgotten cemeteries, abandoned, wanting to learn about these cemeteries as much as possible because they're so full of history. I'm coming up to some headstones here, and I can tell they've been cleaned. They really did a great job here as far as cleaning this up. Richard O'Neill, he was born November 8th, 1804, and he died on May 12th, 1886. We got some broken ones here. As you can tell behind me is West Oxmoor Road. I have driven down that road so much, and I never thought that there was any kind of history here. Let's see if we can find some answers to what the Oxmoor community was and what role it played in the early days of Birmingham. And I was able to find a blog and a book from the author and history teacher Jake Collins. So my goal is now to get in touch with him and see if he's willing to meet with me or with us, and tells us a little bit about the history. So let's see if we can find any evidence of what was once the Oxmoor community. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
Describe Birmingham during the time of the Oxmoor community.
So behind us is Oxmoor Valley, and then there's Red Mountain behind us, and on the other side of that is Jones Valley. And before there was a Birmingham, there was actually a little town called Elyton, which is pretty much directly north of us right now. And it was a very small village along what's now Highway 11. Most people had not moved south of Red Mountain until just prior to the Civil War. Some people around the south recognized the need for iron so they could get some of that metal down to Selma where they could turn it into weapons. And so early on they decided to come into this valley because they found all the materials necessary to make that. And so people started slowly coming over the mountain. One of those guys was John T. Milner, recognized the need for having a railroad to come over the mountain. And so that's really when the community developed. Is early 1860s, there was the Oxmoor furnace, which is in this valley behind us. And then there was another furnace, the Irondale furnace, which is up the valley just a little bit at the head of Shades Valley, just up this way a little bit.
Oxmoor was located in the Shades Creek Valley, in the shadow of Shades Mountain, and one of Birmingham's earliest industrial complexes. Oxmoor was one of the milestone events in the development of the iron industry in the Birmingham district by making iron using coke rather than charcoal. Oxmoor, eventually spelled Oxmoor, was named after company lawyer Daniel Shipman Troy's North Carolina plantation, which was named after the family homestead in Ireland. On January 31st and March 21st of 1863, the Red Mountain Iron and Coal Company acquired the land to build the railroad into Shades Valley and access both of the future Oxmoor furnace land and the future city of Birmingham. So what was the Oxmoor community?
All we know is that people began to move into the valley. There were people who had run furnaces in various places throughout the South, and they started attracting people to that area. We know that there was at one time a hotel. They obviously had plenty of houses for people. And if it's anything like the Irondale furnace, most likely a lot of the stuff was built probably by slave labor, which is also really interesting because there weren't a lot of major plantations in this area.
After reviewing old maps and comparing the cemetery's location with today's map, we were confident that we knew where the Oxmoor General Store used to be and the family's home that operated the store.
That little line right there, that's Happy Lane.
That's where we are now.
That's where we are. There's the mercantile store. That's probably the house right there.
Okay.
So we're standing in those two places. And if you go down there, I know for a fact that house down there, it's actually for sale. It's on 5 acres. Y'all want to buy it. It's really nice.
Don't tell my wife.
But this was a really pretty home that probably set flush with the ground close to the road right here. We've got a picture of it.
Yeah.
And up at the front of the road, we see how it still does dip down a little bit. So it would have been flush with the ground up here, and it looks like they would have had a really nice balcony view out across the valley over there. And then just in front of that would have been their store. We don't know a ton about this family other than they had a house here, there was a store there, and there were other homes here that served this community. So for people who lived in this part of the community, it's too difficult maybe to get up on top of Shades Mountain. It's too far to go to Red Mountain, and so the Goodwin Mercantile Store is probably where they got most of their goods just for everyday living.
Now, I'm curious if there's any evidence that would tell me if this house, this home, stood here. Let's see if we can find a way in and look for any evidence that a building stood here once. It's a good thing it's wintertime, because I can tell you right now, if this would be summer, there's no way I could get in here. I'll see if what appears to be a foundation. It looks like there was something was added on right here. If the building really stood here, as Jake was telling us, got a foundation right there. Like I said, there's a slope, and you could have seen the valley from here, from that balcony that he was telling us about. I don't know, this could have been part of the garage, or like a barn or something. Well, here we got found some support beams. But anything that I see so far suggests that the building stood here. Let's move on to the next location. A community and general store evolved in Oxmoor as a result of the development of the Oxmoor Furnace. In order to supply the mining community with needed provisions, the Oxmoor General Store served as the main store for the Shades Valley and Shades Mountain community. It was one of the first sources for early ice delivery in Jefferson County. The store was first known as the Goodwin Mercantile Company and served the community for 46 years.
Where we are in the Oxmoor Valley, I went to preschool right up here on the hill, and then my best friend lived up on Bluff Park, and so without going on the interstate or taking Highway 31 to Patton Chapel Road, my mom would bring me down this road. It always scared me to death driving on Shadescrest Road because you're right there on the edge of it, and it terrified me. But I always remember coming down this, and I remember the old store sitting there, and I remember looking down this road, and it feels like I can remember seeing some older houses down here and thinking that's some really old stuff down there. And then right below the store, there was a cage. And I think at one point they had a cat or a mountain lion or something that was in that cage. And I remember seeing the cage. I don't remember seeing the cat, but I do remember seeing that cage as we would drive down and then start to go up the mountain. But I had no idea there was a cemetery there. I had no idea there was a furnace over there. I just knew there was an old building right there that just didn't seem like it looked like the rest of Homewood, Oxmoor Valley, Shades Valley. It just, something over here looked different. And now, 20, 30 years later, I realized like, wow, this is one of the oldest parts of Birmingham, and hardly anybody knows about it.
So my understanding is that Oxmoor Road is one of the oldest roads in Homewood now. Mm-hmm. In the 1860s, Oxmoor-Irondale Road was used to haul pig iron from both Irondale and Oxmoor south to Selma. The road was also important for early settlers of Shades Valley, as it was easier to use it to access the two furnace commissary stores for supplies. It was along this road that the settlements that would eventually become Homewood took shape. At some point in the first half of the 20th century, the road became known simply as Oxmoor Road. Mining camps along Oxmoor Road were used as filming locations for the 1925 silent feature Coming Through. If you've driven on Oxmoor Road, you traveled a road that has been in use since the Civil War.
It's reasonable to think that Union troops probably came down right down this road down to the furnace.
Wilson Raid was a military operation through Alabama and Georgia from March to April of 1865. General James H. Wilson led his Union Army to destroy Southern manufacturing facilities and was opposed unsuccessfully by a much smaller force under Confederate Lieutenant General Nathan Bedford Forrest. One of these facilities was the Oxmoor Furnace. A first-hand account was given by Mary Gordon Duffy, a historian, writer, and poet, best known for her sketches of Alabama. Mary wrote,
"During March, I had passed through Oxmoor, peaceful and hospitable. On the afternoon of April 13th, I gazed upon a scene of ruin at this same spot that makes me shudder now as I recall it. It was in Montevallo when the invading army entered. After a walk of 30 miles, I reached Oxmoor at the close of a tenderly beautiful day of early spring. There I hoped to receive food and shelter to relieve my hunger and fatigue. As I neared the familiar scene, my heart sank at the strange stillness of the landscape. Here and there, a broken-down army horse searched for tender young grass. The tranquility was overwhelmingly lonely. At last I mustered courage to venture on and found myself standing by blackened ruins against the wall of the furnace tower. As I contemplated the silent houses up the hill, the deserted road, the awful truth flashed upon me in despair. In bitter despair, blinded with tears, I knelt and prayed."
Legend says that some of these graves may have been disturbed by Union troops after they burned down the furnace. Some of the graves were actually sunk in and shallowed out.
On the summit, I stopped to view the grave of a child of Mr. Haynes, a scientist. To my horror, a wayfarer told me that stragglers from the army had broken the marble stones and dug into the grave in search of treasure. I hurried away. The following morning, through the lane of mud and water, I made my way to Eagleton. But ere I retired that night, I knelt and dedicated my future life to the glory of my native state.
So where are we now?
So where we are now is we're right on the Shannon-Oxmoor Road, and the modern railroad is just north of us. And we are at the very top of, according to a 1927 map, is what was left of the furnace right before they dismantled it. So the majority of the furnace would have been down here in this valley going down towards the creek. And we're just above two of the boilers, probably close to, according to this, the oil house and the tool house. So where we're standing, we would have been able to look down and see the entire furnace complex. Wow. So the hotel, the houses, all that would have been down that way. And then there would have been a couple of things up here where this modern subdivision is.
Oxmoor Furnaces went into operation in late fall of 1863. And it was run by 60 furnace men, along with about 200 to 300 slaves.
There's a lot of mystery around the Civil War and the furnace and exactly what happened here. I know this sign says that it was destroyed once. There may have been another time in 1864. I've also seen maps that say materials made for the Battle of Shiloh were made here. Well, the problem with that is this isn't developed until 1863, and Shiloh takes place in 1862. So there's a lot of stories out there about where exactly the iron from this furnace went. We don't really know, but it definitely wasn't at Shiloh. We know that there was iron produced here during the Civil War that was probably shipped down to Selma. It would have been very late in the war. They wouldn't have destroyed this if they weren't producing things that were helpful to the Confederate Army. So we do know that some metal was made here that was then turned into weapons for the Confederate Army.
After the war, Daniel Pratt and James Sloss bought a controlling interest in the Red Mountain Iron and Coal Company and was reorganized as the Eureka Mining and Transportation Company. Daniel Pratt placed his son-in-law, Henry F. DeBar de Laban, in charge of the Oxmoor site. The furnace was rebuilt several times and was acquired by several interests and was later merged into the local Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company, U.S. Steel acquired this successful enterprise in 1907. As Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company, Inslee Works, and later the Fairfield Works came into production, the furnaces at Oxmoor were left idled. World War I demanded the relighting of Oxmoor furnaces on February 21, 1913, and after the war the furnace was in operation until May 1927. The stacks were dismantled in 1928, and over time the Oxmoor community started to disappear. Today the site of the Oxmoor furnace is a cul-de-sac roadway in an industrial park along the Oxmoor-Shannon Road. Oxmoor is one of Birmingham's oldest industrial complexes, playing a key role in the development of the Birmingham district. The Oxmoor Cemetery serves an important reminder of the industrial history of this area and is a testament to those many workers and their families who call this area of Jefferson County home. We encounter history every single day without realizing it, and Oxmoor is an example of forgotten history. I hope you enjoyed this video. Consider supporting this channel by subscribing and even giving me a thumbs up on this video. Feel free to share this video with your friends and family, and I can't wait to see you again when we explore history.